Hello and welcome back to another Guitarcadia video. I'm Nick Nightshade and today I'm going to be introducing you to some of your very first beginner open position chords that I think every guitarist should know. You may notice that I have a Capo one. It's because I usually leave my guitar in D standard tuning, which is slightly different to what we used in the tuning video. I will be demonstrating all the chords as if you would be playing them on your guitar. Keep in mind that they will sound exactly the same, but it may look slightly different on my guitar neck. But I will be providing you with chord diagrams and chord codes to match the chords that we'll be going over together. All right, the first two chord types we're going to be looking at are minor and major chords. They make up most parts of the harmonic spectrum in music, and they're the first chords that pretty much everyone learns to use. And you might find that these are the chords that you end up using later in your guitar career anyway, when it comes to songwriting or jamming. These are the chords that I still use to write my own songs. All right, so let's start with my favorites. I personally prefer minor chords, so we're gonna look at A minor, D minor, and E minor in open position. Here we go. So my favorite chord, first one, A minor. Here's D minor. Here's E minor. All right, those are the first three we're going to look at. So I'm also going to explain something called chord codes, which I like to use as a shorthand for explaining chord diagrams, and they translate directly into tabs, which we'll eventually get into if you don't know how to read tabs yet. Okay, so let's look at A minor. I'm going to build it one finger at a time, and there will be a diagram on screen, probably somewhere here. And you can look at the diagram, and the diagram will be placed to suit your guitar in standard tuning. This is more just as an audio reference. I will also do a little video over here that'll show you the finger placement up close. All right, so let's get into it. So A minor. Firstly, the chord code is going to go like this. We'll have X on the low E, because we're not going to play that. We've got an open A string. We've got our second finger on the second fret of the D string. We've got our third finger on the second fret of the G string. We've got our first finger on the first fret of the B string. And then we got an open high E string. So open strings are strings that we're not fretting, like the open A. And fretted notes we will denote with a number, which relates to the fret that that finger is on. Okay, so for instance, if we were to turn this chord shape, like in the diagram, we would turn this into a chord code by calling it X02210. That makes up an A minor chord in tablature. Okay, a note on actually gripping the chords, and this will apply to most of the chords that we're looking at. When it comes to placing your finger in the correct place, you want to be kind of just behind the frets. You don't want to be, on top of them, because then you get that buzz. Okay. If you're in the middle of the frets, that's kind of still a safe zone. You can still get a nice clear chord. If you're towards the back end of the frets, which is towards the headstock of the guitar, you would have something that would sound like this, just for fun. Okay, even if you press hard, you can get a clean chord, but there's still some buzz there, okay? So ideally you want to try and get as close as possible to the frets without being directly on top of them. Least effort, best sound, okay? So that's what we're going to be aiming for. But chords are, they're going to challenge your fingers in all different kinds of ways. So when you're placing your fingers, it's not always going to be optimal. You're going to have to problem solve and try find the best hand position for you. Keeping in mind, everyone's hands are a little bit different. You might have long, skinny fingers. You might have big, chunky hands. And certain chords are going to challenge you in other ways. Just do your best, I would say, because you might find later, as we do more videos together and more practice sessions, you'll find that maybe if you're a big chunky hand kind of person, that bar chords are easier for you. And if you got long, skinny kind of fingers, you can dance in all kinds of chord shapes. But what you're aiming to do when you're gripping a note is you want to be using the absolute like tip of your finger, like the fleshy pad of your finger. So you're not pressing flat necessarily. If you do that, your chord's going to be dead. Okay, and if you stand right on the little fleshy tips, you'll get a nice clean chord. Okay, and that's going to apply to most of our chords. Another note I'd like to bring up just on how to hold chords is also thumb position. Okay, now my thumb's doing something wacky here. That's just from years of, you know, performing and like not really focusing on correct technique. But what is optimal again is if the fleshy pad of your thumb, so this part of your thumb, the fleshy pad, right? If that is on the back of the guitar and you grip on the tips of your fingers, what that does is it creates space between your palm, right, and the neck of the guitar. So between the neck and your palm, you kind of want to have some space for your wrist to move around, your elbow is free, your back is straight, you're kind of sitting nice and comfortably, and you should be able to get a nice clean chord. Okay? 2 things we do with the chords in the beginning. We're going to strum them, just brushing our pick through the correct, or if you're playing with a pick, I mean, firstly, if you are holding a pick, like this, I've got a nice Jazz 3. I love these. They're my favorite. Oops, there we go. And you kind of point it towards the body of the guitar like this. And you don't want too much sticking out, just a tiny bit, enough to kind of strike the strings as you brush through them. Okay, one way to think of strumming, it's like you're trying to draw a gentle line across the strings with your little pick, you know. Okay, that's a down strum and an up strum. You're gonna do a little down, up, down if you want. Okay. We can also pick the individual strings. So if you are playing with a pick, we can go from the lowest string in the chord to the highest string like this. So this would be called arpeggiating. Okay, arpeggiating means to break the chord up into its single note fragments that make up the chord. Okay, so all 5 notes together make up the A minor chord, but if we break them up into their single notes, we have an A minor arpeggio. Okay, here it comes. Okay, so you're picking individual notes, and this is a great way to test your chords. If your chords are not ringing out clearly, your arpeggio is going to reveal that. So you can basically come back down. Okay, if you're someone who likes to play with your hands and fingers and it's, you know, you don't have a plectrum or a pick, you can also do this with your thumb. Some people will strum just with the fleshy pad of their right thumb like this, and you can kind of strum upwards more with the nail of your thumb. Some people like to do that. I am so used to playing with a pick that I still pretend like I'm holding one. I've got like an invisible pick, and I'll strum downwards with my index fingernail, and I'll strum up with my, like the tip of my thumbnail, something like this. Okay. What's really cool when you're arpeggiating and you don't have a pick, you can actually use all of your fingers on your right hand. So we'll have thumb, first finger, second finger, third finger, fourth finger. So there are other ways to denote the right hand, but I just like to use right hand numbers because, you know, once you get a feel for the pattern, those number patterns will also help you create a right hand picking pattern. Okay, so today we're going to keep it easy. We're going to take our right thumb and we're going to either just arpeggiate all the notes just with our thumb. Okay, and then you kind of hop on the strings on the way back. That also works. But if you do want to use the claw, we'll be picking some notes with our thumb, some notes with our first finger, some notes with our second finger, and some notes with our third finger. So the way this will work, the thumb is usually responsible for the 3 lowest strings, E, A, and D. And then your other 3 fingers, your index, middle, and ring, will be responsible for the G, B, and high E strings. Okay, so for A minor, we don't play the low E, remember, X, 0, 2, 2, 1, 0. So we play the open A string with our thumb, then D string with our thumb. Then, almost like we're trying to lift the strings up with our right hand, we pluck upwards with our first finger, upwards with our middle finger, and upwards with our ring finger. Okay, so in motion, it'll sound like this. Very nice, if you're holding your chord correctly. If not, you're gonna have something like this. Okay, so you might have to adjust your left hand a bit and get a nice clean sounding chord. Okay, you can also, I'm pulling my hand away as I do this, but if you keep your claw kind of hovering above the strings, you can also repeat the pattern. You can just practice that round and round forever. Or you can turn it into a little up and down pattern. So you go up through the strings. We could say we're arpeggiating up, and then we can come back down through the strings where we arpeggiate down. Okay, so you can practice that. We've got a strum and a little right hand arpeggio. And this was just a bit of an introduction to your right hand finger style. You can either use your thumb, you can use your thumb and your finger, you can go full finger style, or what I like to do, I use my pick and I use a bit of the fingers as well. So I'll do something like this. So I'm actually getting the pinky involved on the picking. So this is called hybrid technique, which we'll look more at in another video. All right, so now that we've gone over what we can do with the chords, let's get into actually playing a few more other chords. So we'll look at, like I said, A minor, D minor, and E minor. Okay, so we've done A minor now, so let's just do a little strum on that one, build the chord, strum, then we'll arpeggiate from low to high, and we can even come back down, and then strum again. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So new chord diagram, we're going to do D minor, and we're going to move a little quicker through these because now I've explained all the techniques you can use. So let's build our D minor chord, and you'll see in the diagram it says X, X, 0, 2, 3, 1. So that would translate to not playing the low E string, not playing the A string, open D, second fret G string, third fret B string, and first fret on the high E. So we should have something like this. Okay, so strum, arpeggiate up, arpeggiate down, and strum again. Great way to practice your chords. Okay, let's go to the next one, E minor. This is probably the easiest one of the bunch, and there's a couple different ways to do this. I would recommend that we do kind of like Spider-Man or the rock and roll sign. We're going to use our second and third finger on the second fret of the A string and the second fret of the D string, and then the rest of the strings we just strum open. So the chord code for this one will be 0, 2, 2, 0, 0, 0, like in the diagram, right? It should sound like this. It's a bit of a nothing else matters intro, right? You can also practice that if you want. Okay, great chord, very dark and solemn. So you'll find that all the minor chords will have that same feeling. They're all kind of dark and a little bit foreboding, very emotional sounding. Okay, I love minor chords. Okay, that's it for our 3 minor chords. We had A minor, D minor, E minor. Okay, another fun thing to do with your chords, you can also hop on them. I like to call these quick chord combos. So you can team them up and jump through them. So if we do a quick combo here, let's do A minor, D minor, A minor, E minor. So it's 4 chords, but then we end on the first chord to wrap it up. So that's called a chord progression. We're building the chords together to move the music forward. Okay, so we'll go A minor, D minor, A minor, E minor, A minor. Okay, and just so you've got a bit of time to do this with me, or I'll demonstrate and you can try. we just double strum on each one and then change. So we'll go. Okay, you can also take that round and round. Before you end on the A minor, you can keep it going. So it'd be something like this. A minor, D minor, A minor, E minor, and then round and round on A or end on A. Okay, fun thing to do with your chords. You can practice those quick changes. You can eventually just do one strum like. Okay, get those fingers hopping and moving all at the same time. All right, are you guys ready for some major chords? I'm going to take you through these ones as well in the exact same way. The only difference with major chords is that they generally sound a bit more uplifting, a little bit more happy. They've got like a more jovial sound to them. Some might even say that they sound pretty cheesy. And when I say some, I would probably say that. More of a minor chord fan, but major chords definitely have their place in the harmonic spectrum. So the first chord we learned before was A minor. So we're going to look at A major here. And this is where you're going to hear the difference. Generally a little bit more calm and happy. Okay, compared to A minor, a little bit more sad, foreboding, uplifting, right? That's thanks to the major third and the minor third, which we'll get into eventually. Okay, so let's build the A major chord. This one, with the quick chord code and the diagram, will be X022220. A major. So we can do the same thing, strum, arpeggio, strum. Okay, A major. Let's move on to the next one. Here we go, C major. Okay, for C major, we've got X32010, like in the diagram. Okay, arpeggiate and strum. Okay, C major. Let's check out the next one, G major. The chord code here, 320033. There are variations of this chord, but I prefer this one. So I'm going to teach you this one. G major, great, full six string chord. Okay, up next we have D major. This one is, with the chord code and the diagram, XX0232. With the open D string. Okay, if you're struggling with the chords and they're starting to sound a bit something like this, then all you need to do is try and get a little closer to the frets with your left hand. Try stand on the tips of your fingers. And if there is buzz, you might find that the high E's maybe not ringing. You've got these three. And then the high E is a bit like, if you actually play that string and you like focus on your left hand, you can actually feel that it's vibrating against one of the backs of these fingers. So I can feel that this string now, it's touching the back of my third finger. So if I get that one out the way a little bit, tiny adjustment, standing on the tips of my fingers, then it works. Okay, so it's a bit of problem solving. I'll be very surprised if you can get this first try. That'll be amazing, actually. You can give yourself a round of applause. Okay, so D major, strum, arpeggio, strum. Next up, we've got two additional chords here. So we've got a couple more major chords than minor ones. So this one is going to be the F major chord. And there's a couple of variations of this chord as well, because it comes from a much larger chord, the F major bar chord, which generally is quite a challenge for beginner guitarists. So we'll eventually overcome that together, but I'm going to give you one that is basically this chord chopped up into an easier to play fragment. Okay, so you've got, I'd recommend this one to start. You kind of dodge the barring altogether. So we're going to do X, 3, 3, 2, 1, X. Okay? So we don't play the low E and we don't play the high E string. So this will sound something like this. It's only a four note chord, 4 of the strings. Okay, and the reason why we like this one, a lot of the country, folk, or pop songs will, they'll use F and C major, and those two changes go so nicely together. C to F. It's great. Okay, very minimal movement. And here you might see my thumb creeping over the top again. It's bad technique. If you feel like your wrist is feeling sore, you can actually push that wrist down, bring that thumb back. But I tend to do this sometimes as a little sneaky technique. If your thumb creeps over the top, you can actually also mute that low E string. Okay, that's it for F. And then finally, the last chord is E major. So this one will sound and look like this. Okay, if we just quickly refer back to E minor, that was 0, 2, 2, 0, 0, 0. You can hear that dark, foreboding sound. And then if we just add our first finger down, remember the rock and roll sign for the chord? Rock and roll. Okay, then we just put our first finger down on the G string. There you have it, you've got a major chord. Okay, so this one is 0, 2, 2, 1, 0, 0. Okay, same as it is in the diagram there. Let's strum and arpeggiate. Making sure you've got all 6 strings ringing out. All right, so that's it for our 3 minor chords. We had A minor, D minor, and E minor. We actually did 5 major chords. We had A major, C major, G major, D major, F major, and E major. Alrighty, so I feel like I wanted to get into a bit of a jam with those chords, but maybe we'll do that in the next video. I know this has already been a bit of a lengthy one. Sit down, work on getting those chords under the fingers first before we put them into motion and looking at adding strumming and changing in time with music and having a bit of a jam. You need to get these shapes into your fingers and into your memory and practice them just by jumping between them with your left hand. You can also do like what I was saying, you can practice just gripping the chord, strumming, basically checking the chords that all the notes are ringing out by arpeggiating, and also arpeggios sound really nice. And in the process, you're also developing your right hand, whether you want to pick with a plectrum, you want to pick hybrid style, which I'll be impressed with. You want to pick just with your thumb. Not really my favorite. Or you want to pretend like you're holding a pick. Picking with your nail, you get more of like a sharper tone. Or getting your right hand claw out. Whichever it is, it'll come to you. And I think whatever feels most natural to you, that's what I would recommend that you go forward with. You're going to develop different techniques and add them to your guitar tool belt as we go. I really hope you enjoyed that first session together. We covered our very first beginner chords, open position minor chords and open position major chords. I hope you found this video valuable and you like hanging out with me and playing guitar. I am planning on releasing more content for you. And for those of you who are interested in more, I do offer private one-on-one guitar lessons online via Zoom. So if you're interested in joining my weekly roster of students, you can jump into a deeper dive of the Guitarcadia world where you'll have an avatar, you'll take on gamified activities and challenges, and we'll work on songs that you care about. For students who also want to learn to sing, we can work on your voice. And for students who have aspirations to want to record, we can work on original pieces and doing a remote recording together. If you have anything specific you'd like me to cover or any questions about anything that we covered in this video, I'd love to hear from you and looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then.